Shalom. So today we're going to look at Proverbs chapter 6 and verse 6. It says, "Go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways and be wise." Right? So what the Most High is basically telling us is observe nature and see what wisdom we can get from it. But in this case, we're not going to go to the ant, we're going to go to the frog. Right? So now I'm going to show a footage of something I recorded a few days ago, and we're going to observe it and see what can the frogs tell us about water season, right? So we're going to look at two aspects. We're going to look at in terms of animals, and we're going to look at in terms of plants, right? And both from the standard of the water season. First, let us look at the water season and the frog itself, right? Then we start to draw our knowledge from the entire thing. Now, as you can see, these little frogs swimming in the river, right? Now, what's going to happen over a process is that they're going to lose their tail, they're going to start growing their legs, and then afterwards they can leave the river. So, what it is telling you is that the frogs are not going to go and lay in the river knowing that there's a flood to come, right? So, there will be no overflooding of the banks until these frogs do what? Drop that tail thing, grow their legs, and leave. So we know that we have a few more weeks to play around with, right? No, with safety being the priority, even though we understand this, we don't leave the animals close to the banks at night because in case anything should happen, you don't want to be leaving the camp to go and check on animals. So for safety, best thing is to just keep them away. So once we give them the water in the evenings, we usually move them away from the bank so we don't have to deal with that, right? So during the days, they can go, they graze next to the river, next to the banks, and so forth. But in the evening, after watering them, we take them away, right? So that is it for the animals. Now, in terms of the plants, it's very important to understand because most people who follow the scriptures but do not really get into the agricultural aspect of our heritage, sometimes they fall short, meaning lack of experience, right? Most people try to equate the beginning of the year with the water season, but that's not accurate, right? Because the Most High never told us to use vegetation to determine the beginning of the year. No, people who do that, once if they should get into agriculture, they would be making a lot of mistakes, meaning if they're waiting on that water season to say this is the beginning and now it's time to plant, you're gonna lose all your crops. Because when the water season come, your seedlings are gonna be so small they cannot resist the water that's coming. So you're gonna lose everything, right? The beginning of the year deals with the lights of the heaven, the sun, the moon, the constellations, according to Genesis 1 and 14. Right? He said the movement of lights. So once you get into understanding the pattern of the lights and what happens in the earth, you will have a better understanding of when to do certain things in terms of agriculture, right? Now think about this. Here, our water season would come late April, May, and so forth, right? Sometimes it changes a little bit. Last year it came very late, May, June. It was unusual, right? But we have our water season at a certain time. Now, think of a person who that does not know about agriculture should go and start planting in May. By the time your seeds start sprouting, you'd lose everything. You'd lose all your seedlings because they'd be so small, and when the water comes, everything would be destroyed. You'd lose everything, right? You'd also be late for your planting because the time when you were supposed to start sowing your seeds, you did not do that. So they don't, the roots that are not strong, the plants are not strong enough to withstand the water that is to come. So it's important to understand what? The heavens. Now, this is a diagram of the sun and the moon. The drawing is crazy, but you'll understand it, right? So when you understand the sun and the moon, the pattern, right? There is a northern point where the sun goes to before it comes back around, and there's a southern point where it goes to, then it turns around, right? Now, this diagram is this way because that's how the board is. I cannot draw it horizontally. Now, I don't want you to perceive this in a vertical way, but rather horizontal, right? So this is not indicating that north is up and south is down. It is saying that north is outwards this way and south is this way. So towards the board would be north and towards the camera would be south, horizontal, right? So you get the point. Now, when the sun reaches this southern point where it's turning, this moon, these right here would be moon, right? There is a moon that comes directly after the sun changes direction, right? So you'd have one moon here. So this was like, let's use Roman dates for now. So this would be like, say, December 25, right? This moon would be January, right? Now, this is a good time where you give your land the first plow. So here would give the first plow of the land, right? Now, this moon here would be February, let's 24, right? Now, here's what we have to understand. February 24, now the sun is going to reach this point within these 30 days from February 24 to the 25th of March, right? So within these 30 days from here to here, the sun is going to cross from the south to the north. But as you can see, the moon comes after this crossing point. You have to wait until the new moon comes, then you start the beginning of the cycle. You don't start it on the point of when it crosses, right? You start on the new moon that follows. So this is why each of them has the moon after these points where the sun is, right? So you have three moons here from the 24th of February to the 24th of March. Then here would be the point where you start your beginning of the cycle. So at this time, at the beginning of, say, March, right? The ending of February to the beginning of March, that is where you give your land the second plowing. So here would be second plow. So you give the first one here, like say January, Roman time, and you give the second like in the beginning of March, in the mid March, right? So your land is now prepared, right? You're preparing your seeds. So further down in March, there you can go and sow. So your plants will be strong enough. When the water season comes, you're looking at the second moon here, going into the third. When the water season comes, your plants, your young plants, can withstand the water, right? So this is important for us to understand when we start to get into the experience of farming, planting, right? We have to understand the lights in the heaven, not how the vegetation appears, because that has nothing to do with the beginning, right? And it has nothing to do with your crops. If you don't understand the cycle, you will lose a lot. You will lose animals too, right? Now, going into the second moon, that's where your water comes. You know what happens when you plant during this time? Like, say you plant your plantains or your bananas, those trees are going to grow very tall. Now, if you don't want your trees to grow tall, it's not good to plant in this time. You have to wait a little bit so you can plant them, your bananas here, or you planted before, right? So it depends on how you want your trees to grow. So the wisdom of the frogs is basically letting us understand how it is with the water so you can know how to deal with your plants and your animals. Most of the times things don't work out for us is because it's not because we don't understand or don't know really what to do. It is because we do not prepare, right? In schools they taught us that education is the key, but in reality we learn that preparation is the key. And to know the importance of preparation, the Most High gave us an entire day and an entire night for preparation just for the Sabbath. You see how important preparation is? Yes, the Sabbath is important, but you see how important preparation is? That we need an entire day and an entire night for it. So it's the same thing. Getting into agriculture, you have to prepare. You have to prepare your land before time, you have to prepare your seeds, your irrigation systems, everything. Preparation is very important. Once you start to get into the cycle, the agricultural aspect, then everything will be different for you. Because this is where the revelation starts coming. Reading the scriptures is one thing, but when it's not integrated, you'll have a total different understanding. But once you start get into this, then everything comes to you naturally. You know when to do things, when not to do, what not to do. You know how to act, you know how to follow the laws of nature. There's a universal law that's inscribed in the universe that we have to follow or we should follow, right? So I hope this gives an understanding of how things actually work outside of how we think it actually works. So observe nature, go observe the frogs, observe these animals, see what we can get from them, right? Shalom.